In some distant year, long before people flew across continents or crowded into megacities, a whisper travelled along trade routes and armies, a sickness that came fast, spread faster, and left fear in its wake. Communities collapsed into grief, towns emptied, economies stalled, and sometimes entire regions felt like the world was ending. That sickness was influenza, not the mild seasonal inconvenience most of us think of today, but a deadly pandemic force shaping history. If you want to understand how disease can reshape civilization, or how a single virus can redraw borders, topple power, and leave scars across generations, stay close. Because the story of influenza as a pandemic is one of humanity's harshest teachers. Influenza pandemics have haunted humanity for centuries. Long before we had microscopes, vaccines, or public health protocols, influenza, or illnesses very likely equivalent to it, swept across continents. One of the earliest widely documented flu pandemics occurred in 1580, when a wave of severe influenza moved from Asia to Europe and Africa, riding on trade caravans and maritime routes. In that outbreak, entire cities fell ill in a matter of weeks, thousands died, and the disease was so universal that historians noted almost everyone was infected or sick. Centuries more of trade, migration, war, and exploration meant every few decades another pandemic could arise. The constant mixing of peoples, merchants, soldiers, sailors, created perfect conditions for a virus to spread globally. By the 19th century, with faster ships and railways linking every continent, influenza outbreaks could circle the globe in months. The 1889 to 1890 Russian flu showed how quickly influenza can circle the globe. Among those 19th century pandemics, the outbreak of 1889 to 1890 stands out. Often called the Russian flu, this pandemic moved rapidly from Asia into Europe and then overseas, affecting populations across continents in a matter of months. Estimates suggest global fatalities around 1 million. In a world without antibiotics or modern hospitals, that number devastated entire communities. This pandemic illustrates what happens when human mobility intersects with a novel influenza virus. People travel, carry infection unknowingly, and the disease leaps from one region to another. Then came what many call the mother of all flu pandemics, the 1918 to 1919 pandemic, also known as the Spanish flu pandemic. The responsible virus, a strain of influenza A H1N1, spread globally, infecting roughly a third of Earth's population. That's almost 500 million people. Of them, an estimated 25 to 50 million died. Some estimates even push higher. Watermark. Relic logic. What made this flu particularly terrifying was not just its spread, but its behaviour. Unlike the usual influenza outbreaks that tend to hit the youngest and oldest the hardest, the 1918 pandemic killed many healthy young adults between 20 and 40, a demographic ordinarily least vulnerable to such infections. The pandemic moved in waves. The first wave, in early 1918, appeared milder, but as the virus mutated, later waves became far deadlier. Shortly after infection, victims could collapse into severe pneumonia, and death could follow within days. Communities were overwhelmed. No antivirals existed, no effective treatments, no vaccines. Medical systems collapsed under the weight of the sick. Control measures were primitive: isolation, quarantine, limiting public gatherings in some places. But, these were unevenly enforced and unevenly effective. For many societies, the 1918 flu was, absolutely catastrophic. It disrupted economies, labour supply, families, and even the ongoing war efforts. In one particularly grim statistic, in the United States alone, about 675,000 people lost their lives. After 1918, humanity did not leave influenza behind. The virus evolved, resurfaced, and, struck again. In 1957 to 58, the Asian flu pandemic, caused by influenza A subtype H2N2, swept the globe, causing an estimated 1 to 4 million deaths worldwide. Then, in 1968, the Hong Kong flu pandemic, caused by the H3N2 virus, struck. It was, once again, a global outbreak that really tested health systems and exposed all sorts of vulnerabilities. These subsequent pandemics were, thankfully, less devastating compared to the catastrophe of 1918. And that was, at least in part, because medical science had advanced. Vaccines, better hygiene, antibiotics for secondary infections, and improved diagnostics all played a role. Still, flu pandemics remained capable of causing widespread mortality, social disruption, and, lasting damage. From the ancient 1580 pandemic to 20th century waves, influenza demonstrates a repeating pattern. A novel virus emerges to which human populations have little or no immunity. It spreads quickly across travel routes and dense communities, and it hits hardest where sanitation, public health or healthcare access are weak. Because of the unpredictable nature of the virus, its ability to mutate and produce new variants, influenza pandemics remain inevitable. Applying this knowledge in real-life or low-resource settings means preparing on multiple levels. First, invest in sanitation, hygiene, clean water, and basic community health education. Clean living conditions reduce vulnerability. Second, develop systems to detect early outbreaks. Community monitoring, local clinics, communication networks. Early detection and isolation save lives. Third, stockpile and maintain access to essential medical supplies, masks, disinfectants, antibiotics for complications, and basic supportive care. For survivalist communities, or, those in remote or rural regions especially, understanding influenza's history means building resilience not just with weapons or supplies, but with knowledge. So avoid overcrowding, maintain hygiene, monitor newcomers, manage sickness carefully, and respect quarantine when needed. When we study influenza as a pandemic across centuries, what emerges is a pattern of vulnerability, adaptation, collapse, and recovery. Societies recovered, new public health measures, sanitation, vaccine research, health systems evolved. But, the scars remained. Demographic change, loss of trust, cultural shifts, even migrations. Yet within that history lies hope. Humanity learned to fight, communities reorganized, medicine advanced, and each time survivors carried knowledge forward, building stronger defences. That legacy is ours now, whether we live in crowded urban centres or remote rural villages. If you care about global health, about survival or just history, influenza's pandemics offer a brutal but honest teacher. They remind us that humanity is powerful, but not invincible. That knowledge, preparedness, community and solidarity matter more than ever. If this deep look into influenza as a pandemic resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Share this with fellow history lovers, community leaders, survival-minded friends. Let's keep studying the past, learning from it, and preparing wisely for whatever may come.